supportive wife and a nurturing mother. There's actually a big push towards back to that in some areas. The Seneca Falls Convention is a gathering of feminists. There's actually a couple of males there. Elizabeth Cady Stanton wrote the Declaration of Sentiments, which stated that all men and women are created equal, kind of taking a new spin on the Declaration of Independence. And Lucretia Mott is another like women's rights leader. Lucretia? I'm not naming my child that. Don't look at me that way. Later, 1800s, we get the emergence of Susan B. Anthony, leader of, she's big towards the suffrage movement. She even tried to cast a ballot in an election, knowing if she tried, she'd be put in jail. She didn't like. Victoria Woodhull was, she argued for what she called free love, like the idea of being able to make your own choices in how you love somebody. It's a part of the new morality, with like it's eventually going to bring about like the birth control movement and just being much more open towards sexual discussion and sex outside of marriage, just new morality. Just say no. Just wait, please. There's an order to things in life. Go in that order. It makes things so much easier. Don't laugh. It's the truth.
But like, you sound like my mom.
Well, your mom's right. You need to graduate high school, graduate college, get married, get a job in there somewhere, like a real job, and then have your kids. Please, go in order. Getting off my soapbox. When they're passing the 15th Amendment, Stanton and Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony are the two biggest ones about trying to extend that to women as well. But it doesn't. It still provides gender discrimination, just no racial, for the men. And Wyoming is the first state to grant women the right to vote in state elections. No national.
Did they move to Wyoming?
All the women?
No.
They, that's not where their homes are. They want to be able to vote wherever their homes were.
They should have.
Early 1900s, we have the National Women's Party that's led by Alice Paul. They led marches, hunger strikes. They were the ones that were against Kaiser Wilson because he would not give them the right to vote. The 19th Amendment gives women the right to vote, suffrage, universal suffrage, whatever phrase you want to use. Margaret Sanger is the leader of the birth control movement. She wanted women to have more of a choice in when they had their children and whether they wanted to have children and whether they wanted to have intercourse without facing consequences. Flappers were women in the 1920s. They had greater freedom in fashion, behavior. They had the short haircut or the bob. They had the shorter clothes, like skirts and stuff. They'd wear pants.
Bras.
Much more liberal. They'd burn their bras, stop wearing one, hey, whatever. Rosie the Riveter symbolized all the women in factories during World War II. Because a bunch of the women are in jobs somewhere, there was an increase in the setup of daycares. But they are forced to leave after World War II in order to give those jobs to the men. The 1900s, later, Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique. It urged women to move beyond what she called the drudgery of suburban housewifery. drudgery, dadgummit, forget it. The problems and the poor standard of living of being a suburban housewife. And it's going to launch a second wave of feminism. That book just makes me mad. The Equal Pay Act says that if they are doing an equal job, then people should receive equal pay. Up until that time, if men and women had the same job, we'll just use teachers. So maybe you pay men $40,000 and you pay the females $30,000. Like, you can't do that. If they're doing the same job, then they should get the same pay. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, it's going to give gender equality as well as racial equality. You know, we think of the civil rights movement mostly with racial discrimination, but there was also gender discrimination, especially in employment and like private facilities, like movie theaters, things like that. You can't do that. The National Organization for Women was a bunch of feminists. It's founded by Betty Friedan. And the Equal Rights Amendment passed Congress in 1972, but it was not ratified by enough state governments in time, so it's gone. And it would have given full constitutional equality for women as far as men.
So we still don't have that?
With the ERA, it would have been like anything a man can do, a woman can do. Don't get so excited. There are things that women should not be able to do the same as men. Like, we should not be able to take our shirts off and mow our lawns like men do.
Is that illegal?
Yeah. I can't mow my lawn topless. It's not okay. Like, you don't, like, come on. So, it would have given, like, universal equality, and it's the same.
That would be awesome.
Parts of it would be awesome, parts of it would not be awesome. So, any question about women's history? Okay. Turn to page, oh jeez Louise.
When you're president, you should
No, I'm not giving full constitutional equality to women when I'm
Why
president.
not?
Because I don't think men and women are totally equal. There are certain things that should be kept sacred. Keep it covered. Things like that, keep it covered. Nobody wants to see it, sorry. No husband wants their woman on display. Turn to page 26. We'll go through the books and the writings and the speeches. Try to knock out this part. I know some of these we've been over, so we'll just go over some more. Books and writings. Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. That should be 1776, not 1876. Typo. And it's just in support of the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution. He argues for breaking away from Great Britain. Doesn't make sense for a tiny island thousands of miles away to control us.
Federalist.
Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay wrote the Federalist Papers, and that's to support ratification of the Constitution.
Didn't they write that anonymously?
Yes, they did write it anonymously, but we know it's them. Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon. That is the Mormon holy text with the Bible. So they have two. Alex de Tocqueville wrote Democracy in America. He came to visit America for a while, and then he wrote about it, about the different aspects of society, wide range. It's read a lot by political science majors. As history major. I didn't have to read it in any of my classes, but I know it's studied by poli-sci majors. It does predict the end of things like slavery and discrimination. It's still widely read. Frederick Douglass wrote the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. It's his autobiography. He was a slave and then was later freed. Henry David Thoreau wrote The Resistance to Civil Government. It's also known as civil disobedience. And it says that the government that governs best is the one that governs least. So very hands-off government. The government gets its abilities from the people. Have I lost anyone so far? I'm just giving you a brief summary important. You don't need to read all these. Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin in response to the fugitive slave law and exposes the evils of slavery. She's an abolitionist. Henry George wrote Progress and Poverty. Says that the different causes of depression and how poverty continues even though we're industrializing. And the more that you increase your wealth, the more your want will increase. The richer you get, the more you want. The more you feel like you have to have. I want. I need more money. Helen Hunt Jackson, Century of Dishonor. We just went over that with the Native Americans. It's the trends of mistreatment of natives. Josiah Strong wrote Our Country. That's to promote missionary activities in the West. Edward Bellamy wrote Looking Backward, about different utopian societies. Actually, a lot of utopian societies are founded and are inspired because of him. What it would mean to live in a perfect world. Actually, in his book, if I'm not wrong, his takes place in like the year 2000, and there are different ideas, like the idea of like credit cards and things like that are like come up in his book. So. Alfred Thayer Mahan, The Influence of Sea Power Upon History, and he wrote from 1616 to 1783. That's the time period he studied, but it was published in 1890. And he wrote about how naval power is the key to success in imperialism. If you're going to have colonies, if you're going to have an empire, you have to have a strong navy. Frederick Jackson Turner wrote an essay called The Significance of the Frontier in American History, so that the idea of